This is my young monstera elbow, and although I haven't had it for very long, I want to set it up so that I can achieve the larger leaves as fast as I can, but in order to do that, I need to add something into the pot. Monsteras need a support stake to get larger leaves, as well as in time more fenestrations and perforations, which we all want. If it's left without a support system, the weight of the stem over time will cause it to sag, and you probably won't get the larger leaves that you want. That can also be said for other types of climbing plants like this pothos plant. This is the golden Hawaiian, and you can see how large this leaf is compared to the ones lower. So it uses its aerial roots to latch onto or anchor to a support system, and as it grows, it gets larger leaves. I have a few other varieties here as well. Right beside that is another golden pothos, and it's got a large leaf. Here is a marble queen back here, and one of my favorites right now, aside from this one, is my Baltic blue. So you can see the leaves are a little bit smaller, but as it climbs up the plank, it's getting these absolutely beautiful leaves. So there are many different types of supports that you can use for your monstera. You can use the classic moss pole, you can use a wood plank, a burlapped wrap pole, or you can even use a hockey stick. Basically anything that will support vertical growth you can use. Now before I start telling you which one is better or which one I would recommend for your plant, have a listen to my friend Lee from Kill This Plant as he explains the role of aerial roots on a support system.
Personally, when it comes to large form Monstera deliciosa, I do not care about the aerial roots. Whenever someone mentions aerial roots, it's always in the context of how the plant uses those aerial roots in the wild. But really, that's none of my business right now. I only want to talk about practically and specifically how are the aerial roots going to help me. And the truth is, they can't. They can only help me find the backside of the plant. Your Monstera deliciosa just needs to be stable. That's it. So what are your aerial roots going to do if they're up against the plank? Well, they're just going to do whatever they're going to do. You can't really control where they'll go, but this is probably what it will look like. Some aerial roots will shoot out to the left, some will go out to the right, and others will hit the cedar pole and go straight down and add to the root system within the soil. With this plant, your aerial roots really do not need to enter your moss pole or your quarter pole for some sort of magical stability. And to be honest, they rarely ever do. Yes, moss poles can be beneficial, but you do have to be managing the moisture levels, which might look like watering every 3 days, and you'll probably be having to manage the position of the stem of the plant much more frequently. It's just a lot to manage. Whenever I discuss some of the pain points of using moss poles on my TikTok account, hundreds of people chime in and let me know that they're unable to keep their moss pole moist, or those stackable poles become unstable, or generally their roots aren't actually digging into their moss pole.
Go check out the rest of Lee's video. I'll leave the link down in the description. Now I have another monstera back here that I want to show you the aerial roots on, and then I'll show you the one on the other plank. This one, you can see the aerial roots are just out of control. These ones grow into the soil, and these two right here I've actually had to cut back because they were growing into this pot and I didn't want it to take any moisture or nutrients from one of my anthuriums. Now back over to this one, I just want to show the roots on the cedar plank. These ones are latched on. They are attached, and over time they will just grow off to the side like Lee explained, or they will grow back into the soil. But I think it's pretty cool how these big chunky things have actually latched on to the plank, and it is growing upright in a straight vertical fashion. And this is the newest leaf that it just recently unfurled, and here is one of the older leaves. So it has sized up quite a bit compared to the last leaves. Here's a large form monstera leaf that I got as a top cutting. It is on a plank as well, and I just have a little grow light just on top to provide some top down light. When I brought it home, it was getting a leaf and it was unfurling, and it pushed out the tiniest little leaf. So I'm hoping with the next leaf that it's going to produce something large like this again. I think it was kind of stunted as it was being propagated in water and I put it in soil, so it definitely had a little bit of shock when it was growing. So I'm hoping that the next leaf, like look at this baby little leaf, the next leaf will be something similar to this size. So for my little mini monstera, I'm going to be using a little mini plank. I'll be potting it in terracotta, and I'm going to be removing it from the moss, and I'm going to transition it into soil. So the stem of this plant is not large, so I don't need a massive plank or anything like that. So I cut this plank down to size, and over time, as the plant grows up to the top of the plank, I'm probably going to have to repot it into something larger anyways. So this is the setup that I'm going to use for this. Now this is what makes me really nervous, taking it out of the pot and out of the moss, but I just wanted to show this here first. I bought this as a monstera mid-cut, and what that is you take a middle section of the stem, you propagate it, and it'll grow roots, and eventually from that node, it will grow a new, basically side growth, and that's what happened with this right here. Down here, this node produced a side shoot, and eventually it turns into an entirely new plant. So that's what this is. This is a mid-cut. Now when I take it out of the pot, I'm going to investigate the root system, but I want to show this. So this node produced this growth point. If you look right above it, here is another node. So on the back side, right here, there is a little bump. It's kind of calloused over, but I do believe this is a growing eye or a new growth point. So that's what you need to look for when you buy a mid-cut. You need to make sure that there is a growing eye. So it looks like there is one right there. So now when I take it out of the pot, I should be able to cut this node off and take this little cutting and propagate it in water, and I should be able to grow another monstera elbow from this node, since this node right here produced the growth. So that's kind of exciting, as I potentially could have another monstera elbow here in time. Now I'm just using my little root rake. I'm just using the butt end of my root rake just to kind of loosen up the moss a little bit, and then I'm just going to pull the plant out. And I just want to show this here quick as well. This one is getting its first fenestration. This leaf is just starting to unfurl, and it has a slit in it. So that's why I want to get it on a support stake to grow vertically, and then it can get larger leaves as well as more fenestrations. So now I'm just going to pull this out of the pot and have a look at the roots. Now all I'm going to do is use my pencil and just slowly pick away at the moss. I don't want to damage any of these roots at all. I don't want to break them. I want to keep them intact. So these ones right here I have to be really delicate with. Down here it looked like it had a little bit of root rot at one point. So not ideal. That's why I want to get it out of the moss. Long-term moss, I just don't, it's just not my preferred growing medium. So I want to get it in a nice chunky aroid mix, but I'm super nervous doing this. I don't want to harm my monstera elbow here. Okay, this took way longer than I was expecting. I probably have been chipping away at this for about 25 minutes or so. And for the most part, the roots look pretty good. There's a few areas, like right down here, where there's some black tips, which I'll have to cut off. And I only lost maybe like a few roots, so not a big deal. Now for this little node cutting right here, there is a large area root that does grow into the soil, so it does have a fairly decent root system, so I don't think I have to propagate it in water or anything like that. I'm actually just going to pot it in its own pot of soil and see if I can get that growth point to sprout and get an entirely new monstera. Now I'm kind of torn because this root system, or this root here, is providing nutrients to the entire plant, not just to this node or anything like that. So if I cut this off, I'm essentially cutting off, it looks like maybe like a third of the root system. So I'm kind of torn right now. I'm going to take a minute to think about it, and then I'll see what I'm going to do. Okay, I decided to do it, and I don't really have anything to support this on because I don't want to crush this little leaf. I'm going to slice right here. I don't have my finger behind it, so okay, just slowly working it through, and there we go. It is separated. So now I have this little stem. It's got the nice root system. I cut off a little bit of the dying roots, and then now I have this entirely new plant here as well. And on the back side, you can see there is a little bump right here. That is the growing eye. So I'm going to put this one back in soil as well, and hopefully I can get another plant from this one. I just rinsed off the roots, plus I didn't want them to dry out, and I also used a little bit of rooting hormone just on the fresh cut on the top here. So now all I'm going to do is put the plank in the pot first and then place the cutting. I'm just kind of jamming all the roots down there. And I'm going to position this somewhere around here, like that. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm just going to hold this with my finger just against the plank. And then I'm simply going to add soil into the pot. I'm just using a tropical plant mix. There's a little bit of orchid bark as well as perlite. You want something that retains moisture but doesn't stay wet for too long, something that is really well draining. And I'm just going to dump this in just around the roots, and I'm going to use the pencil to poke it down just to fill in any air gaps. I'm going to add a little bit at the back of the plant here too, just so the plank stays upright. Okay, it's packed down pretty good. I'm going to give it some water and that'll help settle it as well, but here is the finished product. Now the same thing for this one. I'm going to keep this probably at a height like that, and then I'm just going to dump in the soil. Where's that growing? I'm going to put it like this, a little off to the side, because I want this growing point to grow upwards. So I'm just going to cover it with soil. Okay, so they both had a good thorough watering, and I'll definitely be providing some updates down the road with the mid-cut one here to see if it produces a new growth point. Now I'm going to take this one over. It just lives on the floor over here underneath one of my Soltec grow lights. So I'm going to show you where I have it, and then something that I've noticed that I think helps with the overall rate of growth. So I'm not an expert or anything like that, but I've been checking the soil temperatures of the surrounding plants, and these monstera Thai constellations, as soon as I put them on the heat mat, they just started pumping out the leaves. So this is the second leaf that this little guy has gotten, and this one didn't do anything for the longest time, and it just finished putting out this leaf. So I'm just going to quickly show I'm going to set it to surface temperature. And when you face it towards the ground, it has readings of 21.5. When I put it on the heat mat, it's almost 35 degrees, 34. Oh, that one's 36. Let's go right here. Ooh, 37, so it's got some hot spots for sure. So 35. Now when I go on to the side of a pot, the temperature is about 24. Now when I come over to one that is just on the ground and I do the temperature on the side of the pot, it is 20.8, so that's almost a 4-degree difference. Now if I do the soil, just going to rest that on the pot. So non-heat mat, 21. Let's do the soil of a heat mat. Well, it's kind of the same. But the pot is much warmer. So I'm not too sure if that's a contributing factor to the overall rate of growth, if soil temperature has a contributing factor. I know we talk a lot about temperatures in our homes, having it around that 20 degrees is kind of the optimal growth, but I'm thinking that the soil temperature has something to do with it as well. But if you have any knowledge about soil temperature and how it relates to houseplants, just leave a comment down in the description. So I know these smaller monsteras do well on a heat mat as well as alocasias. Here is a Giagiana back here, and then I recently made another heat mat for some of my plants over here. So I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. I will definitely be providing some updates down the road, so stay tuned for that. If you have any other comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Thanks again for watching my videos, everyone. Take care. Bye.